16. We're here for the Education, Environment, and Sustainability Committee meeting. Thanks, everybody, for coming. And can we have a roll call, please, Madam Clerk?
Calling the roll, Ms. Simon?
Here.
Ms. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Schrein? Mr. Schrein is absent.
Here
Oh,
he
I'm sorry,
is.
Mr. Schrein is here. Council President Brady?
Here.
There is a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that Council members Miller and Greenspan are in attendance.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do we have any public comment related to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Two persons signed in to speak. The first one is Mr. Jeff Ritchie.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm Jeff Ritchie. I'm the past commander of the North Olmsted VFW 7647 out in North Olmsted, where we represent now Olmsted Falls, Rocky River, Westlake, Bay Village, Fairview Park. Cuyahoga County used to have about 70 VFWs. We're down to about 40 some now. And I got an answer back when we asked for a grant saying that you guys wanted to stay more with direct access. Well, I want to tell you, we are direct access. We're on the front lines. That's what we do. Veterans helping veterans. Our motto is honor the dead by helping the living. And when you get out of the service, one of the first things you miss is camaraderie, and that can be the root of a lot of problems. One of the few places you can find that is at a veterans organization. We have people coming into our place 2-3 times a month. We put them up in hotels. We steer them in the right way. They're homeless. They're homeless veterans. A few years ago, our post was asked to work with the land bank. We put together this book of a whole program on how to go from temporary housing to take veterans with problems and put them into new housing using their VA. I spent 6 months working with the land bank. We ended up not working with them and some other things happened. But we now have a heroin epidemic in this county. And here's one of the answers right here, already put together. Funded, built it, volunteers, pro bono people, and we can get veterans into housing and start improving some of our neighborhoods. We went from that, then we built the Hayworth House on Columbia Road. We had a veteran there, his community failed him, the inspectors failed him, the VA loan system failed him, and he had a house full of mold, and he was an injured veteran coming home from Afghanistan. We ended up putting together a team with Mike Swallow over at Neopat, tearing that house down, getting new blueprints, and building a new house and putting them in there with no help from any government agencies whatsoever. Again, on the front lines, taking care of business before people even get to asking the community for help. It's veterans helping veterans. We are not just a bar. And what I wanted to explain here today is, again, there is nobody that has direct access to veterans better than we do, whether it's visiting a funeral home to do an honor guard, going to nursing homes, bringing guys from nursing homes out and feeding them at our club and give them a day out of the nursing home, going out and getting with the community and promoting patriotism, working with Cub Scouts, scholarship programs for high schoolers, tracking our young men and women that join the military from high school and watching them go through. So again, I see my time is up, and honor the dead by helping the living. Nobody does it better than us. Thank you.
And next is Mr. Marco Cuevas.
Good afternoon. I'm also representing VFW 7647. I became a member June of last year, and just this past May was voted in as one of the officers. I would arguably say that I'm probably the youngest person in the post at the moment. I would say it's pretty close. My full-time job, I work in nonprofit in Lorain County. I work for a nonprofit funder. And one of the things, when I look down this list of where the money's going, I see one of the things that almost no veteran service organization has. These are agencies that have full-time staff. These are agencies that have a budget for those people in those positions to be able to take care of all of that work. One of the things that they get for that is that you have some awesome grant writers. You have some awesome people to tell the stories of the work that's being done. It's what I do in my full-time job. I help our agencies tell the story of the work that they're doing to help get money. Now, I've only been a member of the VFW for a year. And one of the things that I'm asking for, I believe that our original ask was for about $25,000. And I would beg the council to consider, give us the opportunity to prove what we do. Now that I'm able to be a member and more involved, I'm trying to help transition. We have to do reporting for IRS stuff anyway. We have to submit it to our district office, which goes to our national office. But the format of those reports isn't very user-friendly, and it doesn't really tell the whole story. I'm helping to change our post to tell that story so that we can go after some of these larger grants and some of the abilities to really showcase the work that we do, as Jeff said, having direct access. As I said, I would ask for $12,500, for half of our original amount. Give us the opportunity to prove the stories that we were just telling you. Give us that opportunity, because everybody that's in our post right now, and with any veteran service organization, they're all volunteers. They're not getting paid to do this work, so it either falls by the wayside or it doesn't become a priority. I'm fortunate enough that what I do in my normal job, there's enough overlap that there are times where I can be kind of working on both things at the same time. Whether I'm putting stories together that relate to veterans in Lorain County, I can do it for the same thing, the exact same formats for what I'm doing at our post in North Olmsted. So it's been a pleasure to be a part of the post. I'm hoping to help propel them to that next level, and I'm just asking for your support to help get us there. Because, as I said, we're all volunteers, including myself. I dedicate a lot of time outside of this or outside of my normal job to be able to prove to you guys what we're doing. And I honestly believe we're going to get there very, very shortly. So thank you for your time today, and I look forward to any future decisions you guys make and hopefully supporting us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, at this point, we're going to get a motion to approve the minutes, April 20th. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Minutes adopted. So the one item that's been referred is regarding the Veteran Service Fund in 2016. Madam Clerk, do you mind reading that?
Resolution number 2016-0101, determining the services and programs that shall be provided in funding from the Veteran Services Fund in 2016, authorizing payments in the total amount of $355,681 for said services and programs for the period ending 12/31/2017.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and I was going to call up Mike King from our office, because before us we have the recommendation of staff, which is consistent with the mission and ordinance for which we passed the Veteran Service Fund. The money's been allocated according to that which we've discussed and actually intended. What we heard from the VFW is we're not going to have any amendments in committee. We're not going to do anything with that today because this money's already been allocated in 2016. I'm going to have staff explain that, and we can ask questions of the hall, but the chair of the committee wants the committee to be cognizant we're not making any amendments in committee. We're going to have another meeting on this. There's 40 plus VFW halls in the county, and it's my understanding that this is not, from committee's chair point, something that the money should be used for, that we have the Fisher House, we have all these other operations that we put in place, but the committee's welcome to ask questions, as I will. But for now, staff has set forth our budget for 2016, and I want to hear from staff about how you came to this recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael King, Council staff. As most, if not all of you are aware, the Veteran Service Fund was established in 2012 to provide supplemental support for organizations serving veterans in Cuyahoga County. And the revenues for this fund are derived from the unspent cash balance from the Veteran Service Commission from the prior year. Because that's somewhat of a variable amount, over the past 4 years, this number has varied between $39,000 to $750,000. So it's not a reliable necessarily funding source. But this year, the available balance was $355,681. So as we've done in the past, at least one other year, council staff informally solicited proposals from organizations in the community who currently serve veterans. We did not solicit proposals from county agencies or from the sort of legacy educational institutions. As you'll recall, 20% of each year's fund has to go towards post-secondary education or workforce development. But we did solicit proposals from outside entities, mostly nonprofits in the community, and that was advertised publicly. The resolution before you today reflects council staff's recommendations for the 2016 awards based on the proposals received and the Veteran Fund statutory guidelines. The spreadsheet you have in front of you shows the current recommendations. On the second column from the right there, you'll see this year's staff recommendations, and you can compare these recommendations to past years, going back to 2013. The recommendations in yellow, those are the ones that are, as I mentioned, the legacy sort of historically 20% going to Tri-C and CSU for scholarships for veterans. The blue categories are organizations, not all of, only one of which are receive a recommendation this year, but have historically received allocations, and these are either county agencies or county affiliated agencies. And then the ones in green are the organizations that submitted proposals this year, and the two at the bottom in white did not submit proposals, but we are making a recommendation. I will get to that in a minute. A couple things to note about these recommendations. First is, unlike past years, the $15,000 that is being recommended for Towards Employment's Career Pathway Services is being attributed to the 20% of the Veteran Services Fund allocated to workforce development and post-secondary education. As you can see in the proposal letter, which I believe all of the proposals that were submitted. The Career Pathways for Veterans program provides training for job preparation, job retention, and career advancement, and staff felt that fell within the statutory guidelines for the 20%. And then also, this year's recommendation is that the full amount appropriated to the Office of Homeless Services, which is $100,000, it's at the top of the blue section of the spreadsheet. In past years, that was divvied up between MHS, which is now Frontline Services, and Eden. And this year, rather than making specific allocations to those organizations through contracts, we basically are recommending that $100,000 be appropriated for the Office of Homeless Services contracts budget, and then they can make the appropriate determination based on where the need is. I'll take any questions at this point, and if you have particular questions about the individual services provided, I'm happy to answer those. Also, I believe most, if not all, of those who had applied are present today. So if you'd like to call or see if they're here and would like to come up, you're welcome to do that as well.
Okay, thanks so much. Any questions from the committee of staff? Those who are not on the committee, do you have any questions?
No questions. I just wanted to emphasize that the genesis for this program was to repurpose Veterans Service Commission money that was being returned due to statutory limitations from the ORC as to how and why they couldn't spend it, was for the county to repurpose this money specifically for veterans organizations. I can say at this point we're still the only county in the state that does this, of the 88 total counties, and to date this year's award will total nearly $1.5 million of money going directly to veterans organizations to support veterans. It's something our county should be very proud of, and I'm glad to see that we're continuing with this program.
Mr. King, I have a question. Well, thanks, Councilman Greenspan, who actually came up with the ordinance originally to do this, and all the council members who contributed to the actual programs within this program. One of them was a land bank, and they are doing very well with their home loan, and that's why they are not seeking additional funds at this time, because they have a revolving loan to do that. Just a quick question on Towards Employment. Is that in addition to Tri-C and CSU, we're adding, or is this a?
So basically, yeah, so if you think of it this way, 20% of the $355,000 this year would be approximately 60,000 plus, a little over 60,000. What we did was, normally what we've done in the past is take 10% of that amount, and send it to Tri-C, 10% of that amount, and send it to CSU. We basically split it in half, but first we deducted 15,000 and said that is going to go towards employment. That's what they requested as part of their ask. We believe it falls within the realm of workforce development, and it helped make some of the other numbers work to help, make recommendations that were as close to what other organizations were looking for, so that they could provide services that were crucial. And basically what that results in is it's a $7,500 decrease in the total amount going to Tri-C and CSU individually. We just did a sort of pro rata decrease on that, so.
Councilman Schrod.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, you had been making the recommendations, or staff had been making the recommendations for the years in regards to this program?
Sorry?
The staff recommendations were staff recommendations in 2015, staff recommendation 2014?
Yes, the only other year in which we did this type of informal solicitation, this informal RFP process, was in 2014. As you can see, in 15, we only had $39,000. So
I understand that,
yeah.
but the recommendations were coming from staff.
Correct.
Okay, so staff did make a recommendation for the VFW halls back in 2015. 2016, is that correct?
Oh, no, sorry, that column is the request. the
Okay, so
requested
there's
amount.
you've never made a recommendation to fund anything with VFW at all?
Correct. This is the first year we received a proposal from a VFW hall.
Okay, and it's the only one that we received it from?
Yes.
And did we actually actively solicit VFW hall solicitations? How did they become aware of it?
We posted a notice publicly. We notified some of the organizations that we knew were interested and that had applied in the past. We didn't reach out affirmatively to the VFW, but it's a public process. So they submitted a recommendation, which they're very welcome to do.
And of the legal aid, that's been reoccurring. The Joseph's Home has been reoccurring. Towards Employment has been reoccurring. Help Veterans 211 has been reoccurring. What have we done to verify that that's actually getting to the veterans in support, as opposed to just coming in and making the request?
So we've received, we require in our annual resolutions reports from the organizations that receive funding in each year. I believe all but one of those organizations filed that report, and the one that didn't, which was the United Way 211 Help to Veterans program, in their application letter outlined what they've done over the past year to provide services to veterans and the impact that the county's past investment has had.
So they submitted a request, but didn't tell us how they did last year, and we're responding positively to that?
They had submitted a request in the amount of $157,000 this year. They had not submitted the report from last year, but they did include in their request basically the contents of what would have been in that report.
Okay, and the correlation between, that's part of the United Way program? And the fact that United Way looks like they're having some challenges in some other fundraising, at least is being reported by the media, is that reflective of why they're coming to us for a source as opposed to, they have their own fundraising source that other veterans organizations probably would have a hard time raising $65,000.
I can't speak to that. I don't know whether or not that was a factor in their request, but you can see they did submit a proposal, and on the back they've got the proposed uses for the funding request that they made. So it included 2.1 FTEs. We endeavored to provide some level of funding this year. As you can see, it's not as much as they had initially requested, but to provide 1.5 to 2 FTEs if possible to help meet those needs. But I can't speak to whether or not it's how it relates to other fundraising goals.
Is there a philosophical problem with the VFW halls themselves in the eyes of staff?
Well, it's ultimately up to council to make the
I understand
allocation.
that.
But to provide just a little bit of a rationale as to why a recommendation wasn't made for the VFW request, the principal issue was that the VFW and this is not to speak at all to what they do for veterans in the community. I'm sure that they do a lot of good work and as they've mentioned, have direct access to veterans in the community. The initial request from the VFW was for $50,000 to help purchase a property located next to their existing facility. They had a fundraising goal of $200,000 and then they indicated that they had raised $50,000, so this would have brought them 50% of the way to their fundraising goal. In the past, it's been council's hope that the dollars allocated would go to direct services of veterans in the year in which they're being allocated, and staff felt that this didn't provide that assurance.
Okay, so this was not for direct service related, this was for capital?
That's our understanding of
That's
what the
fine,
request was.
yeah, and then, all right, I just want to make sure I understood whether there was an objection to the VFW or in this particular case, this veterans VFW's request. So I do want to separate those two concepts out there so that if a VFW hall had a direct support, because I know most of their work is all done through volunteer, I'm not really thrilled with providing full-time staff equivalent over at United Way versus veterans organizations are doing on a voluntary basis, and that same dollar goes a heck of a lot further if it's a volunteer dollar going into a program than it does if we're paying for staff out there. So I only caution us to make sure that we're not sending a message that VFW halls are off limits just because we're not looking to do a capital project on this particular year. Thank you.
Exactly, thanks, yeah. And I know we have a question from Councilwoman Brown, but just as, perhaps going forward with budgets and if we want to entertain different VFW halls, maybe, and set aside a particular amount for that, perhaps we can adjust it that way. But this particular request was a capital project to expand award giving and things like that, medals, I think I read. Okay, Councilwoman Brown.
Thank you, Chairwoman. With regards to the 20% that is mandated, we've split that 20% three ways. Is that safe to say?
That's correct.
Okay, and with part of that split is going to Tri-C and CSU. Can you remind me why those two schools get a 50% split?
That determination was made in the first year of the program that those two schools would. We reached out to them. I think it was Khalil at the time who was running the Veteran Service Fund from a staff perspective at that point. That those two schools were willing to set up veteran scholarship programs, and so we basically divided up the 20% dedicated to secondary employment for those schools and their scholarship programs.
So that was the other part of my question. With them being scholarships and because Tri-C's tuition is significantly less than CSU, would it make more sense to make it, to kind of make it so that a person that's going to Tri-C, the same number would be applicable, I guess is what I'm kind of trying to say. So if we're able to serve 20 Tri-C students, we can serve 20 CSU students, because clearly we can't serve the same number of CSU students as Tri-C the way it's currently split.
That's a good point. That's certainly something we can look into in the future to try and get a better understanding of how many scholarships these equate to. I believe, and I might call to Khalil here as a lifeline on what these programs look like in the past. I don't know that they're full ride scholarships. They may be like a $2,000 scholarship or something like that per student that could provide some assistance as time goes on. So I don't know if Khalil, if you do.
Hi, Khalil Sarin, council staff. I can provide just a little bit of input on this. For one, the reason why these particular institutions were chosen at the outset of this program is because they already had relatively robust and accomplished programs at the schools for veterans who are going back for post-secondary education. My understanding is that these funds are used to supplement funds that they already have, that the students already have, for things like books or supplies and other supportive materials for the classes. that may or may not be supported through other funds, and also for veterans who, for one reason or another, can't use other funds for their scholarships for the school. So it's a supplemental. It's not a full ride to CSU. It's a supplemental scholarship that aids in their education.
Madam Chair, if I could add to that,
Greenspan.
a lot of these scholarships are in the $500 to $1,000 range, and they are for veterans who are no longer eligible for the GI Bill. So it does supplement an existing program, and oftentimes, from a veteran's perspective, these funds are the only veterans-related scholarship funds that they do receive.
Any other questions? So I just want to comment, what struck me on this is that we had allocated money one year to the Court of Common Pleas Veterans Treatment Docket in 2015. This year, however, there was funding through the general fund.
That's
through
correct. It was
the court
included in the budget. Yep.
The court budget. I'd like to see the next time we review this is perhaps reallocate some funds to the court, because that is really going well, the docket, and be able to alleviate some of the money that's given through the general fund for other programs at the court. So that's something that I'll be looking at, as well as, perhaps doing something, an allocation for VFW halls for direct service. But we're going to hold, Councilman Jones.
I had one question on ECDI. Am I understanding that they did not request money this year?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair, to your point, though, is not the legal aid monies, aren't those going indirectly into support of the veteran that would be going through the court system in some form? I would think that's they're getting a benefit both through the legal aid dollars and through, if in my opinion, the veterans treatment docket are probably going to be seeing the same client.
Different. Well, and I'll let staff respond if I'm incorrect, but legal aid itself provides direct representation to veterans in court, so they have an attorney. But the money from the court docket is for treatment, any kind of PTSD, any kind of alcohol or drug related counseling or rehab that's separate from actual having an attorney, which are both really separate.
And one other distinction that I'd make is that the legal aid typically focuses on civil representation. They don't get directly involved in criminal matters, which a veterans treatment court may, if there's a veteran who's arrested for some type of violation, they might have a specialized docket dedicated to help them get rehabilitated in some way that would be sensitive to veterans issues. So while there may be some overlap, there are differences for sure.
Well, I'm sure on the only reason I would question whether or not we would want to put this back into the Veterans Court treatment, if we believe that that's an element that is core to our beliefs of supporting the veterans, if they're core, whether they're drug problems or the drug court, it should be built right into our core budget. This is a budget, as you can see, the swing is everywhere from 39,000 to 750,000. That means in a particular year, if we find the need, you can't look to this fund as a source for that. And I would encourage us to continue to keep it in the core part of our budget.
I just brought that up, and thank you. No, a point well taken with the just unpredictability of the funding amount every year. But my concern as well is that some of the funding to the courts has been looked at perhaps to reduce. And this is such an important docket, and the treatments provided to veterans. I just think it's important for us to watch this when we look at the budget in general, when we go through the budget process, to make sure that there's some treatment there available when they do wind up in the court system, because often that's why they end up. A lot of veterans end up there, is we could avoid that. So that's all. Point well taken. So we're going to hold this, I think, and have another committee meeting on it and not pass it out of committee at this time, if that's okay with the committee. Okay, so that ends this part. And is there anybody else who would like, at this point, if anybody else is here from an organization that's receiving funds or requested funds, if they wanted at least to say anything? No. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, there is?
Come on up. as she comes, I was curious, did ECDI attend today?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Teeter from Legal Aid, and
hi.
I just want to say thank you. I'm here basically to say thank you for all of your support. And all the funds that we get are so critically important for our clients. So thank you.
Thanks for being here from Legal Aid, and thanks for everything Legal Aid is doing. Critical to justice. So this ends this component of the committee meeting, and I want to move forward with just some information from Workforce Development. As background, we received a request from Workforce. You can come on up. As you all know, through our college education service fund, we provide, I think, $500,000 to Workforce to as part of that college or education fund that we were mandated or requested out of the charter to provide. And Workforce had asked staff if we would consider reallocating some of those dollars for lead paint abatement. And as chair of the committee and knowing what the ordinance says, our ordinance will not provide that ability to be flexible on funding. It has to be for the education. But I understand that there's a need, or else you wouldn't have asked us to reconsider. So I would like to understand if you can identify yourself from Workforce and tell us what's going on with the climate with lead paint.
Sure. Jayanti Bhattacharya with the Department of Workforce Development. We had, as Council Chairwoman stated, we had submitted a request to the Council for the permission to use the Education Assistance Program funds for providing the lead certification and licensing of various positions in the under the lead abatement program. The way it started was that we had the County Board of Health approach us to give them a letter of support when they were filing their application, a grant application to the federal government, to HUD. And at that time, they needed to provide them some information, some additional matching dollars that would be used from other funding sources. Those matching dollars could not be federal funds. They had to be either local funds or any other funds which were not federal funds. So when we sat down with them and they told us that they had this need of lead workers, lead inspectors, risk assessors, and contractors, they came to us and said, will it be possible for you to support us in this? So we told them that with the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funds, because those are federal dollars, we will not be able to support them. However, we do have from the council, we have these funds which are with our general fund dollars, and we may be able to provide those as matching. And the need at that time, what we agreed to with Board of Health was to give them about $30,000 worth of CCEAP money to train and provide licenses to, I think we talked about 75 workers, and they could be either just regular workers, they could be contractors, assessors, or inspectors in various capacity. So when the Board of Health were given the award, we had to start working on how do we go about and start paying for these licenses, and that's when we came over to the council to see if these changes can be made into the legislation, because the agency that provides this training is not on the list of Higher Learning Commission or Ohio Career Colleges and Schools or our local Ohio Means Jobs eligible training provider list. They are not on any one of those lists because the type of service that they provide is very specific. They give them the training, and the licenses are issued by the state of Ohio. So the training is provided by, this is called, it's the Dell Group, it's the lead experts. They are the ones who provide the training. So we have dollar amounts that are associated with the training, and then we have dollar amounts that are associated with the licensing of the for doing the type of work that they are interested in doing. So that was the reason why we came to you, that if we could get the permission to go ahead and use these funds, I would think we may have to amend or do another separate legislation. I'm not sure how.
Thank you.
that's
Yeah,
going
at this point, the college fund has already been pretty much solidified. However, I wanted to understand, the committee wants to understand what the need is and why. And perhaps, through this committee, we can find somehow else to match it. Because I understand that the lead paint impacts children prior to their even entering their education, and really impacts their ability to learn even with our universal pre-K program. So it starts there. And is there anybody here from the health department that talks about the need?
Yes, we do have John Sobolewski from the County Board of Health. And
Hello.
Yes, thank you. Hi, my name is John Sobolewski. I'm with the Cuyahoga County Board of Health. And as Jay mentioned, we were the recipient of a HUD lead hazard control grant in November. And part of that application process, we're giving scoring points based upon our ability to provide workforce training, provide especially low-income minority contractors or workers the ability to become contractors, workers, to support the lead activities. Because without the folks to do the work who can become licensed, obviously you can see where the problems occur. So working with the Workforce Investment Board, good opportunity to partner, small sum of money on our part to say, we have $15,000 to do some training. What can we do together? So long-term partnership, perfect opportunity to reach into the community, provide training, provide a committed, trained workforce to get more of the work done. So essentially that was the impetus behind that. And in the past we'd used other partners, but this was a natural marriage of working forward together.
I'm going to open it up to the committee, but the question I have is the city of Cleveland itself. The city health department has been at the fore of this issue of lead paint and housing, and they now have a new director and they're allocating resources. And if we're the Cuyahoga County, where are we going with this money? Is it also in Cleveland or is it outside the city proper? I mean, what is the work of the Board of Health at the county as it relates to the Board of Health in Cleveland?
Yeah, go ahead.
In terms of, we have parallel grants and that we're doing similar activities. Our efforts are focused on the 19 first-rank communities of Cuyahoga County. The city of Cleveland is focused in the city of Cleveland, but we have almost identical grants, and that there is a workforce development component in each of the grants. I can't speak for the city and their ability to spend dollars, but I know that the application process was very similar in terms of looking to provide workforce training.
Are you overlapping in the city of Cleveland? I mean,
That
was my question.
Yeah, we can't cross over into the city and spend
Okay.
our federal dollars.
so you're spending federal
Right.
dollars outside of the city of
Right,
Cleveland?
exclusively in the 19 first-ring suburbs is where
Okay.
we're concentrating, because that's where we have the highest need. I mean, across all of Cuyahoga County, we have more than 2,000 children that are lead poisoned. Within the county, we have disproportionate burden in East Cleveland, Cleveland Heights, Lakewood, Garfield, Warrensville. And so in those first-ring communities, we're targeting those dollars. And so clearly, contractors will not stop at a county line or they're going to go anywhere in the state of Ohio, but if they're living here, they're probably going to be working here. The city has the same need that we have in terms of this competent, trained workforce to get the work done.
So I'm going to open it up to committee, but this committee is going to be looking at the lead issue, and this is the first meeting we've had, and I would like to get information about what the need is versus what certification that we need, how many people we actually need to fill this gap. I know this would be a starting point, so I'm going to open it up to committee members.
Yeah, can I make one quick comment? That we did have the city also reach out to us. The City of Cleveland Board of Health also reached out to us. And what the City of Cleveland Board of Health is doing is in their in their grant or from other sources of funding, they do have funds for the training of these individuals. So for the contractors, risk assessors, and workers, they have funds for training. What they don't have are the funds for licenses. So for the licensing part, they have come to us. And they do not have any restrictions on whether federal funds can be used or not. So if we find these individuals are eligible under our VOA grant, if they are VOA eligible, we are using the VOA funds to provide them with the licenses.
Okay, thank you. So I would like something in writing, some assessment of what the need is, what the estimated amount of locations that the county would be looking at within the first ring, and how those needs are going to be needed to be met, and what a timeline would be to meet those. Any, Councilman Shrine?
So if I understand this correctly, you're saying they have the ability to do funding for everything up to getting the license?
Yes.
What good is the training if you can't get the
For the
license?
city of Cleveland. I don't know, it's probably something that was written in their grant that they can provide training. I don't know exactly, but this is when we had the meeting with them. What they told us was that they could provide training, however, they could not provide funding for the licenses.
Who's the licensing body? Is that a
It's the state of
local?
Ohio,
State of Ohio licenses all disciplines dealing with lead, and licensure is a big barrier to entry into the workforce. And our past experience has been, you provide training, the folks show up, they get the training, they don't go to the next step to get that license. That license is a 2-year license. It's not an insignificant process to get the license, but it's also very expensive from a low-income contractor point of view. So it was seen and identified as a barrier to push them into that next step. They're licensed, and once you're licensed as a worker, you can work for any contractor, and that's the beauty of it. So you have mobility within the workforce to work for different contractors, and as you become more experienced as a worker, then you can become a contractor and expand your business. So it's a business opportunity growth as well, but in the past, our experience has been training. People show up for training, they may take the test, but actually getting that licensure seems to be that barrier. And there's that constant need to keep resupplying the workforce because there's a churn, there's a turnover in the workforce. Even though we've had great stability of funds over the years to go out and fix 100 homes a year throughout our first ring suburbs, those contractors and getting those contractors to do that work is an ongoing process of continuing to bring in new workers, which become contractors, and continue to invest in that workforce.
And the license, does it include, why, they aren't doing it because they don't want to spend the time to go through the licensing process? They don't have the dollar to write the check?
I really believe it's an upfront dollar investment.
Is there an insurance program that's a component of that license, or is there a bond that they are providing? I mean,
Yeah, once someone becomes a licensed contractor, there are insurance requirements and bonding
yeah,
requirements.
that's where it is. It's not,
that go with it.
it's not the $50 for the license. It's,
No, no,
I mean,
it's a
we need to know
Yeah, it's a $500.
the whole business component here, not just writing a check for a license. If there's a bonding component that sits behind that, that's really stopping you from completing the business of being a licensed component.
And from the worker standpoint, there is no bonding or insurance requirement, but it's really seen that, I think that licensure, just from my experience from the last 28 years, it's a barrier. It's a stumbling block when somebody says, write a check for $500, so you might work in the field, 2 years into the future. That's a barrier to entering that business. It's a profession, but it's also highly regulated. And so that is, that's one of the barriers that we've identified.
Can I assume that if you had somebody coming to your home and they had a license but no insurance or bond, that you're probably not going to want them in your home? Is that a good assumption?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
I think so too.
as a
I don't want
contractor,
to,
absolutely. but
if
as
they
a-
can't stand up enough,
No.
I'm not going to go over that
Right.
open Pandora's box and that one again.
Right.
But if they, I've done that
Absolutely.
before.
But as a worker, that the contractors need the workers don't need that bond.
They don't need the license. No. Ultimately, an organization has to, it's the organization that's supporting the guarantees of the protection on this thing. Is there anything in your grant that prohibits you from being able to write the check right this moment for the license?
Not essentially. It's not, in terms of in the funding opportunity, in the past, we had to devote 2% of the total budget towards workforce training. And that is left open to the interpretation as to what that means, but typically it's been direct service of sit down, there's a curriculum, 40-hour course, training through a trained service provider, getting that letter, getting that reference, and then going to the next step of licensure. Traditionally, we have not paid for licenses. There's not a specific prohibition against that.
Then why, I mean, why are you coming to this body and just not go ahead and doing it? I hear the request over here, you have the funds,
Right, and
you've
we-
already been granted the grant from the federal government. You have the ability, nothing prohibits you from writing the check for the licensure.
We have committed $15,000 towards workforce training.
Well, I would make sure you have a piece of that 15 set aside for licenses so that you don't spend it all on training.
And so from the County Board of Health, they are doing it. So they have 15,000 that they will be giving us, and 30,000 we have to use from our funds. So that was the matching that we talked about, so.
I'm sorry, Jay, did you commit to the match before you had a funding source?
Yes, we did commit to the match, and if this doesn't work out, we do have other
Okay.
source that
Okay.
we could look into, yes.
I mean, it doesn't mean down the road, like I said, this
Yeah,
committee is going to be
right.
studying this issue,
Yes,
but for
I-
now,
I totally understand.
okay.
And so at this point, we do have another funding source that we can tap into
Okay.
to take care of
Thank you.
these expenses. But the not paying for the licenses is actually the City of Cleveland Board of Health issue, not the County Board of Health issue.
So you're already doing the license part of it. The city of Cleveland's
They are-
not.
Yeah, we're not either.
Yeah.
We have the right to, but he's not.
I'm giving the money to the Workforce
They are just-
Development Board.
yeah.
And beyond that,
They're giving us the $15,000, and they have said that,
they cut that pie up.
it's like total 45,000, your 30,000 and our 30,000 and their 15,000 is the $45,000 pool, and we will use that for training and licenses.
Madam, if I can-
Councilman Greenspan.
I'm not a member of this committee, I'm just here,
Good.
but I'm trying to figure out what the topic of this is. Are you asking for money? What, I don't get it.
So I will clarify. This committee chair wants to, first of all, have us educated on what's happening with lead paint in the county, which impacts education, the environment, everything this committee represents, which I was going to do anyways, but in the meantime, Workforce approached me as chair of this committee to see whether we would be able to provide funds to them to match the Board of Health's request to Workforce to get a match, to get this grant from the feds. Part of our allocation from this committee is the Educational Assistance Fund, which allocates $500,000 to Workforce to be able to close gaps in education. So people who might have a year left of college, it's always been pinpointed that way. It won't allow them to provide this part of closing, of licensing. And so that's what the approach was, and our ordinance won't allow this now. So what I thought was just to have this need come to us, find out what the needs are, what the issues are, and then perhaps with the next funding, and when we learn about this, there might be ways to address lead in some way.
So is it the broadening of the discussion beyond education, but now into professional license, providing funding grants for professional licensing?
The broadening of the discussion, which will continue, is what exactly the lead paint issue in the county, is there a deficiency with addressing it? If so, that's what I want to find out. If we're letting go the lead paint in the inner ring, where the problems lie, if they're not being addressed, what the impacts are on the kids who are exposed to it, that's all. Because it's obviously an issue that's sensitive, and we've been hearing most about it from the city of Cleveland. But we have the issues in the county, and that's really what the issue is.
Okay, so it's not about funding for licensing?
Not necessarily, but that's part of, that just came up as anecdotally with the city of Cleveland's request for help,
Okay, all right, thank you.
correct? I think.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I just want to say that that lead-based paint is a really big problem, and I'm just happy that you're doing this, and that we should continue to work on it and figure out what we can do to help, because I mean, this isn't an unsolvable problem. They haven't been they haven't been using lead-based paint for decades, and we ought to be able to identify where the problems are and gradually eliminate them, and there's not a large new supply. I mean, there may be some where some old things get exposed, but basically this is a problem that we ought to be able to work down and eliminate, and it has lifelong consequences on the kids affected. So I'm totally with you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Council President? No? Okay.
I'm totally with you too, Chair.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, so we appreciate this, and if you could get back to the chair, I would like location, estimated amount of locations of where this lead paint is. I think it's mostly in the 70s, maybe, right? Structures from 70s and before. So if you can get me that.
If I may, I'll leave this with Khalil.
Okay.
I have a lot of information
Thank
about
you.
the distribution by neighborhood, because we're reaching out to the council members to help us promote the lead grant opportunities. I have demographics, I have breakdowns,
That's
I have
perfect.
maps, I have flyers, and I will leave that, and if you choose to, you can review them. And I'm available at any time,
Perfect.
at anywhere, to come talk to any group about the scope of lead in Cuyahoga County.
I'm going to have you present on that, okay? So you can give us the initial data, and then we'll have a committee meeting for you to come and
Right.
present about
Because that is
locations.
definitely my strength, not workforce development.
Right.
That's Jay's. That's
But
Jay's
they go
strength.
hand in hand in this case, I understand.
So I rely upon them to help me with workforce training, and
Okay.
thank you for your time, I appreciate it.
Madam Chair, would you like me to reach out to the city's Board of Health to get any information from them at this time? Or, because we may, I mean, I don't know if we may be required to ask to use, if somebody is not eligible under VOA to use.
Sure.
To use the.
It can't hurt to get a full scope of the problem.
And the reason, as you know, that for the city of Cleveland, they don't have, what we lack are the workers, lead workers, the inspectors, and the risk assessors. And unless we train them, we cannot do the work that is required for it.
That's what I'm interested in. That would be great.
So I will get that
Thank you.
information, because I think they have a bigger number.
Yes,
They have a much bigger number
level of need.
than the county,
Okay.
full county. So I'll get that from them.
Okay, thank you so much,
Thank
both of
you.
you.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you again. Thank you. Okay, any miscellaneous business? Public comment, Madam Chair?
No, Madam Chair, no one is signed in.
I think, sure. As a final,
Yes.
other public comment, sure.
Other not related to what we spoke of.
Sure. You could have even talked about what we did talk about, but thank you for coming down.
Thank you for allowing me up here again. I would just like to invite the committee members on July 31st from 3 to 10. We have our pig roast. If you guys attend, I will personally cover your ticket to the pig roast so you can see what we're trying to do in the community. Well,
Thank
we'd
you.
still like to invite you guys to join us so that you can see what we're doing. Thank you.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thanks.